A gute Woche. The Rebbe Zalman began the Farbrengen this afternoon, referring to the fact that today is Tetzaveh. Tetzaveh is the date that the previous Rebbe, 51 years ago, arrived here in the United States. And that is when the Frierdiker Rebbe came here on a permanent basis. It is known that the Rebbe was here once before, in 1930. However, then it was a visit. And the second time when the Rebbe arrived here, and this is from where he conducted all of his activities as far as spreading Yiddishkeit and spreading Chassidus. The Rebbe right away mentioned that he was not here at that time, the Rebbe himself. It is known that the Rebbe arrived here into the United States a little over a year, like 15 months after the Frierdiker Rebbe arrived. The Rebbe arrived Chof Ches Sivan Tafshin Aleph, which is like 15 months later or so. However, this is the day when it is already 51 years since the arrival of the Frierdiker Rebbe here in the United States. Number of 50 is a yovel of years. And here we already passed 51 years, which is a year on top of a yovel. And especially that this year is the year of Arenu Niflois, or Niflois Arenu. Anyway, we should put it, it still is emphasizing the fact of 51 years. And this is the proper day. We have to increase and we have to elevate ourselves in all the Avedas and whatever the previous Rebbe requested from us, and this is a suitable day for it. And this is the day when in Pashas HaShavua we read and we learn today Pashas Tetzaveh. Regarding Pashas Tetzaveh, it is the only Sedra since the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. Svarim give reason for it, but the fact why Moshe's name is not mentioned here is because Moshe Rabbeinu expressed himself when he was pleading by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should forgive the Yidden on the Chet HaEgel. And Moshe used the expression, erase me. If I will not be successful in accomplishing this, what I'm asking you, then erase me from Sifrecha, from your Sefer that you have written. And as Mefarshim used the expression, the Rebbe used it in the positive way. The Rebbe does not mention anything in the negative. Birchas Chocham Al Tnai, it also comes Mekuyim. It also takes place. But naturally here it's meant not in the sense of bracha, but it's meant in the opposite. Rabbi used it in the expression of Saginoyo. Which means that being that Moshe Rabbeinu expressed himself so, it did become fulfilled. However, Rabbi did not accept just this interpretation. And we must say that there is definitely something positive in the fact that Moshe's name is not mentioned in the Sedra of Parshas Tetzaveh. Especially in light that we're talking about Torah. And Torah is something which Moshe gave his life for Torah. And we know that mitzvah lefarsem oisem mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to publicize those that do mitzvahs. So definitely so, it is most suitable that Moshe's name should be mentioned. And nonetheless, his name here is not mentioned. So the Rebbe is bringing out that the fact that this Sedra begins with the words of the Ato Tetzaveh, the Ato, you, who is the you that the Pasuk is referring to? The Pasuk is referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Ato is referring to the essence of Moshe. This is a much deeper referral to Moshe than any name can be. Especially, we know a name is given to a child not immediately as he is born. It takes a few days. Especially regarding Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe received the name Moshe wasn't until after 3 months or so after he was born. After, as the pasuk says, his mother couldn't keep him any longer at home, and then he was put out near the river. And the daughter of Paro came, and that is when he got the name Moshe. Moshe he was named Kimin Hamayim Mishisiyu. He was taken out of the waters. Talking about an Indian of giving the name, name to a child, Rabbi mentioned, even though at times we find that a name is known before the child is even born, as we find by the birth of Yitzchak, that the Rebbe is telling Avram, Sora ishtecha yolades lacha bein, and he shall be called with the name of Yitzchak. And the same we find by some of our Rabbeim, also the same. Obviously the Rebbe is referring to the story, famous story with the Maggid of Mizrich, that before he passed away, the Yotzet of the Maggid is Yutes Kislev. And before the Maggid passed away, he told the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe will be blessed with a child, and asked him that he should name the child after him, after the Maggid. And it was the Mittler Rebbe who was born almost a year later, and was named after the Maggid. And the same thing when we're talking about the birth of a girl. The birth of a girl, the name Bepoyel is given once the child is born, just like by a boy once the child is born. That is when the name is given. And it is no minik Chabad. Minik Chabad is that a name is given by the first opportunity that a girl is born, which is the first Kriyas HaTorah, not to wait for Shabbos, but if the baby is born in the middle of the week, a girl, the name is given by the first Kriyas HaTorah. And Rabbi adds that at the same time when we give the name, it's also appropriate to give tzedakah at the same time, and especially that this is done in a Beis HaKnesset and a Beis HaMedrash. That's where the Mishaberach is given. So we have a combination of Torah, Tefillah, and tzedakah right away as soon as the child is born, and this leads to all the brachas that are mentioned in the Mishaberach, which is said when we give the name for the girl. So we see the name factor of the name takes an effect once the name is given, even though it is known before. However, when we're talking about here in this week's Sedra, where Moshe is not mentioned by name, it is mentioned Deve'ato, which means how Moshe is standing above any type of names, the essence of Moshe. And this is brought down Lamato, as the pasuk goes on, Va'ato Tetzaveh. What is the taich of Tetzaveh? The simple meaning of Tetzaveh is command. However, Chassidus, we know taiches Tetzaveh, mitzvah, stems from the word Tzafso v'chibur. Tzafso v'chibur meaning to connect, to bring together. And this is the whole inyan of Moshe. That Moshe is told that his inyan is to bring together, to attach Yidden with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as the pasuk goes on here, what type of an attachment should it be? Like the pasuk says regarding the menorah, me'erev v'ad boker, it should be a constant attachment. What Moshe is bringing Yidden, attaching himself to Yidden, and attaching Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is done in a way that it becomes a permanent attachment. And with this we can also understand that we find at the end of this week's Sedre, we find that the Rebbe is commanding about making the Mizbeach HaKtoros. So the question arises, all other vessels of the Mishkan we were told about in Parshas Truma. Why is it that the Mizbeach HaKtoros, the Torah waits until the end of Parshas Tetzaveh? Because here we are talking about a very high type of elevation in Getlichkeit. As the pasuk concludes, Kol hanegeya b'mizbeach yiktosh. Anything that comes into contact with this mizbeach, anything that touches this mizbeach becomes holy. Which means that all worldly matters are becoming holy. Which is the entire concept of a kolbim is such. What is the entire idea of a kolbim? Kolbim is meloshin kirov. Kolbim brings a Yid close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as Chassidus emphasizes, the whole idea of a kolbim is Odom ki yakriv mi kem kolbim. A kolbim has to come of you. It's not just that he's bringing a contribution as a kolbim. There's much more to it. A Yid, when a Yid brings a kolbim, he gives of himself. A kolbim calls for a self-sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here we're talking about the kolbim where the mizbeach where the K'teiros was brought. K'teiros is a much higher, a much deeper dedication than a regular kolbim was. And that is why, when they brought the K'teiros, that accomplished the reach nechoyach, the satisfaction by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, much more than all other kolbonos. So that is why, after introduction of the Ato Tetzaveh, the Ato meaning the essence of Moshe, the etzem of Moshe. This is what Moshe accomplishes, that he attaches and he brings close Yidden in a position of me'erev ad boker, in a permanent position. Once this happens, then we can come to this higher madrega of the Mizbeach HaKtoros, And the Mizbeach HaKtoros accomplishes that Kol HaNegeya BaMizbeach, anything that only comes into contact with this Mizbeach, all worldly matters that come into contact with this person, gain Kedusha. And especially, that we just had Zayin Odo, which that's the birthday of Moshe and as well as the Yotzeit of Moshe. As the Pasuk says, Hayoim Molu Yomim Ushnoisai. And it's definitely understood that Moshe's years were in a format of Bo Bayomim. Just like we find the Pasuk by Avram Avinu, Avram Zokim Bo Bayomim. Avram came with whole and complete days. All his life was a life of accomplishment. Even though the Rebishter deducted 5 years from Avram's life, Avram was supposed to live 180 years. He lived under only 175 because he should not see Esav doing the undesirable. So Avram accomplished it all in his 175 years. So now when we're talking about the years of Moshe, they were also in such a way. It was Bo Bayomim. And Moshe accomplished whatever is needed throughout all his life. And the same each and every Yid merits Arichus Yomim V'Shonim Tevis. And the Neshama in the years of life, that the Neshama is in this guf, and the Neshama accomplishes whatever it is needed, until we will come to Yeroel Elakim B'Tzion, and that will be the Geula Hamitis V'Ashleima, as we just said in Musaf, Hein Ga'alti Eschem Acharis Kivreishes, the Rebishter will take us out of Goles, and all of this will happen instantly. The Rebbe continued regarding the Ve'ato Tetzaveh, which we spoke about earlier. And when we say Ve'ato Tetzaveh, it doesn't only refer to Moshe Rabbeinu at that time. The same refers nowadays to each and every Yid. Each and every Yid has within him the spark of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's all known, the famous Tanya, which Alter Rebbe introduces this concept. Based on what the Pasuk says, Va'ato Yisrael, Mo Hashem Elokecha Shoyel Mi'imoch Kim Liyiro Yisai. Now, Yidden, what is the Rebishter requesting from you? All the Rebishter is requesting that we should be God-fearing. So the Gemara asks, Otu Yiro Milses Utrasihi. The Pasuk says, all that the Rebishter is requesting is that we should be God-fearing. Is this God-fearing HaKadosh Baruch Hu something so small? It's not so easy to be God-fearing. The Gemara, that the Pasuk should use the expression, all that he's asking for is that we should be God-fearing. So the Gemara responds, Ein, yes. Lagabe Moshe, when we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, Milse Zutrasei. For Moshe it is something simple, something small. So the Alter Rebbe asks in Tanya, the Pasuk is requesting this from each and every Yid. So what does the Gemara answer? For Moshe it is something simple. However, what's about each and every Jew? And here the Alter Rebbe introduces this concept, that each and every Jew has a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu within him. So now when we're talking about the Ve'ato that is in each and every Yid, this Ve'ato, what is the essence of each and every Yid? It is the Neshama that a Yid possesses. And the Neshama that a Yid possesses, that is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As the Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya, based on the pasuk that the Nefesh Hashenis Bi Yisrael is a Chelek Elakah Mimal, and the Alter Rebbe it's on the word Mamish. And as it is known, the klal, when we're talking about an etzem, an essence, if we have it partially, if we're holding on to it partially, it is as if we are holding on to it fully. And this is the level of the neshama that is within each and every Yid. And to this level, the Ve'ato is referring to. Even though Moshe had many names, Chazal tell us. But nonetheless, this Ve'ato is referring to a level within Moshe that is deeper than any type of name. And this, the Pasuk uses not just Ata, but Ve'ato. What does a Vav stand for? A letter Vav is a straight line. That means it's showing on a Hamshach, on a revelation which is coming down, Milmailo Lamata. And this is the source of strength which a Yid has. And he's given this strength. And by accomplishing this Avodah, what happens is, he's preparing, like the Pasuk goes on, Va'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael. And what is happening? The Yid are taking oil, and this oil is coming from crushed olives, that the crushed olives are producing oil that is suitable for the menorah. And what happens is the Pasuk goes on, Kosis la mo'oyer. There is oyer and there is mo'oyer. What is the difference? Moir is the source of light. Oir is the light itself. Moir is the source of light. And what do we say? That a Yid can come to such a level that he's creating a permanent source of light. And how does this come? This comes from the level of the Atta, the level of the essence of his neshama. This is where he's accomplishing this source of light. And this is all suitable on this day, this day of Tetzaveh. When the previous Rebbe arrived here to this part of the world, to the United States. And this is when we are accomplishing this level of Avodah. From the Avodah of Tetzaveh, Meloshin Tzafsa v'chibur, that we're attaching everything with Getlichkeit. We come to the next Sedra. The next Sedra is called Kisisa. Kisisa means that the Rebishter uplifts us. Nosei Yisroish. And from then we come to a level of Ayakel and Pekudei, meaning that the Rebishter congregates all Yidden together, brings everyone together, and then the Rebishter counts each and every one. Va'atam teluk tu la'echod b'nei Yisrael. From Pashas Pekudei we all enter to Pashas Vayikra. What is Vayikra? Vayikra, the Rebishter speaks to, just like the Rebishter spoke to Moshe. The same, the Rebishter speaks to each and every Jew. And then we continue into Pashas Tzav. Tzav, Rashi tells us right at the beginning of Tzav that we need an extra cautioning where it's involving expenditure of money. Chisaron kis, that is human nature. And here we say that a Yid does all of this Avodah even though he's involved in a Gashmistical world where money plays a role, and nonetheless he's doing all of this Avodah. And then all of this leads us to what Shmini stands for. Shmini stands for Geula. As explained many times, number 8 reflects Geula. Chazal tell us that the harp that will be La'asad Lavai will have 8 strings. And from here we come into the next Sedra. And what is discussed in Pasha Shmini, before we go into the next Sedra, in Pasha Shmini it is discussed about the Klois HaNefesh of Nodav Aviyu. How their neshama is parted from their guf, which means their avodas Hashem was at such a level that they got totally associated with the Rebishter, totally close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a saying from the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe says that after a Yid davens and the neshama remains in the guf, after a davening of a Yid, this in itself is a nes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we come to the Seder of Kedoshim. What is Kedoshim? The Rebishter tells us Kedoshim to you. A Yid should be holy. By Yid, be separated from worldly inyonim. In other words, not putting himself into worldly matters. And at the same time, he has an effect on the world. He's elevating his entire environment and all worldly matters which he comes into contact with. Then what happens is, there's a Chazal, the Chazal say on the pasuk, Kedoshim to you. Yidden should be Halik. So the Medrash says, Chazal say, Yochol Kamoini, I would want to think that we can be as holy as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the pasuk goes on, the Rebishter says, his Kiddush is holier than ours. Chassidus teaches, not that Yochol Kamoini is a question, but that Yochol Kamoini is a statement. Yochol Kamoini, a Yid can come close to the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When a Yid goes through this entire Avodah, a Yid reaches the level that he Yochel Kameini, Kedoshim Tiyu, we get close to the level of Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe is continuing that when can a Yid be successful in this whole Avodah? When the Avodah is done, ve'ato tetzaveh. We all know the Chassidish expression, Chassidus despises a chitzoin. And Chassidus calls that Avodah should be done with a pnimius. The Avodah has to be done from the essence of the neshama, not when somebody just does it just to get rid of it, or just that it should be taken care of. He gives it to somebody else to do, and he wants that everyone should notice that he's done it. This is what a chitzon is. Chassidus calls for that the Avodah should be done with a pnimius. Pnimius meaning that it comes from the etzem of neshama, the essence of the neshama does the avodah, and that is ve'ato tetzaveh. Comes from the level of ato, And when the Avodah is done in such a way, that is when it affects. And v'yikchu eilecha, as the pasuk goes on, v'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu eilecha. What is Moshe Rabbeinu accomplishing? He's uplifting Yidden to him. That Yidden are getting close to the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is when they are successful in taking an olive. What is an olive? An olive is bitter. Olive has no sweetness, which means that not all Avodas are sweet and rosy Avodas. And nonetheless, we are taking something which is bitter, and this is being crushed and converted into shemen, that it should be the suitable oil. And again, not all oils were suitable for the menorah. It had to be top quality oil. And becomes a source of light, lahalois ner tomid, that it becomes constant, me'erev ad boker, giving constant light. And this is what is accomplished when the Avodah is done in the format of ve'ato tetzaveh. That when the Avodah comes from the ato, from the etzem hanefesh, from the essence of the neshama, from the pnimius of the neshama, then one accomplishes all of these achievements as we just discussed earlier. Agutavach.